I would like to welcome everyone to the April 16th meeting of the Murray City Planning Commission. With us this evening, I would like to introduce, my name is Phil Markham, I'm the chair. Scott Woodbury, the vice chair, is here. Travis Ney, Marin Patterson, Sue Wilson, Lisa Milkevich, and Ned Hacker are here also. With us as staff supporting us, Zach Smallwood and Jared Hall. I'm not sure if Susan will be participating in the meeting. Okay, yes, and Susan Nixon as well. All right. Well, with that, we normally go through a whole bunch of courtesy regulations for the public, seeing as we have no public in official personal attendance tonight. I would like to mention about the public comment portion. We will have public comment for each of the agenda items on the agenda this evening, and we will pause for a period of minutes, typically around 3 minutes, to allow people to submit emails to the Murray City Planning Commission in order to voice their opinions. And that's, under the circumstances, that's about the best we can do. So with that, I would like to go over our business items to begin the meeting. And our first item that we have to deal with is approval of minutes. And we have 2 minutes to two sets of minutes to deal with: the March 5th, 2020 and the April 2nd, 2020. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa, yes. You're muted. Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay. Any changes other than minor clerical ones that we discussed in our pre-meeting that did not deal with substance?
No.
Okay. All right. I will. Let's see. I have to call for a motion to approve approval of minutes.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Oh, you got it, Lisa. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa,
okay.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the minute. Can we do a motion for both or just one?
Yes, both.
Okay. I'd like to move that we approve the minutes from the February 6th meeting as
March.
Yeah, we've got March 5th and April 2nd.
And April 2nd.
March 5th and April 2nd as discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
I'll second.
Okay. I've got a motion by Lisa Milkevich, a second by Ned Hacker. He beat you to it, to approve the minutes as written with minor clerical changes for March 5th and April 2nd, 2020. Just voice vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Conflict of interest this evening. Do any of the members of the commission have any conflicts of interest regarding any items?
No.
No.
No, I do not either. All right. And approval of finding of fact. We have several finding of fact to deal with this evening. We have Stroker Diesel, Fabiano accessory dwelling unit, Heaps accessory dwelling unit, Murdoch accessory dwelling unit, Sacred Energy bed and breakfast, and let's see, did I hit them all? Is that it?
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay. So is everyone comfortable with the findings of fact as reported to us?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the findings of fact for a conditional use permit for Stoker Diesel on a property located at 366 West, 6100 South, a conditional use permit for Greg Fabiano for an accessory dwelling unit located at 5767 Nina Way, a conditional use permit for Justin Heaps at 6278 South Lorraine Drive for an accessory dwelling unit, a conditional use permit for Nathan Murdoch at 6007 South, 115 West for an accessory dwelling unit, and a conditional use permit for Janet Wall, Sacred Energy bed and breakfast for a property located at 296 East, 4500 South.
Well done.
Just a point of order real fast. Yes. I'm sorry, just a point of order. On Sacred Energy,
yes.
The condition as it's written in the packet, is it going to just be strike condition number 10? We discussed it in the pre-meeting. Or does it have to wait until the next meeting to actually go forward?
The comment about hot tub, right?
About auto cells. Condition number 10 says auto cells.
Yeah, I think it's clerical, so we'll go ahead and fix it.
Okay.
I'll second them.
Zach's error.
Thank you, Jared. All right, I have a motion by Sue Wilson and a second by Jared Ney to Travis Ney, Jared Ney. You know what? I went to school with a kid named Jared Ney, and it's gonna hang on for another 6 months here until I'm gone. So sorry about that, Travis. You can call me George. And so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, carries unanimously. All right, with that, we'll get to our main agenda, our first conditional use permit. Item number 4 has been removed from the agenda. The Decorative Metalworks LLC was withdrawn by the applicant. So we will move to agenda number 5, and that is Bonneview Apartments at 4955 through 5020 South Commerce Drive. It's a mixed-use project with multifamily residential. And Zach is going to present that to us this evening.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Chairman Markham. This is a request from Bonneview Partners LLC. Their names are Eric and Dan Bishop. They are proposing a 4.33 acres mixed-use development with 285 multifamily units with 13,503 approximately square feet of commercial. It's located at, there's 5 parcels, 4955, 4984, 4994, 5002, and 5020 South Commerce Drive. Here you can see the map kind of locating that information, see if this works. If you remember, just briefly in our pre-meeting, Ned had mentioned the church. That is actually off screen approximately here. If you can see that little laser pointer, I don't know if you can.
That's the storage units right there. So.
Yeah, so right south of that is where that church would be. So the site plan is kind of turned. So this is actually Commerce Drive here for you, and then Bonneview leading to Erickson. So the right-hand side of your screen is pointing north. So a couple things: the general plan and the Murray Central Station Small Area Plan support these types of developments. They specifically call out around transit stations that higher density development be considered and are encouraged. As you will remember, the mixed use was modified in 2019, updating some of the calculations for density, including kind of a buffer, depending on how far you are away from the transit station. As well as changes to the ground floor commercial. This, as it stands now, is the ground floor commercial would be used. This is going to be more illustrative here on this floor plan level. So this is the parking level. This is kind of your main ground floor level, showing the 2 areas of commercial square footage. So originally in the old mixed use, you'll remember that we used to require the entire ground floor as a commercial space. That has since been changed to allow for that 40 feet back along a street, which resulted in them being able to have less commercial requirements there. The code allows this property to have up to 100 dwelling units an acre. This project does not hit that. This one is approximately 66 dwelling units an acre, with the 285 over the 4.3 acres. The parking, in the staff report mentions the parking requirement is about 1.125 spaces per dwelling unit. Sorry, I can't speak. And then there's a 10% reduction if you're within, I believe, a quarter mile of a station. So they actually are within that quarter mile. So they would actually get a 10% reduction on that. However, they are cognizant of that Utah is in more of a motor vehicle heavy use area, and they have proposed approximately 371. I was able to do that calculation real quick, which comes out to about 1.3 parking per dwelling unit on average. And that's just residential, straight residential parking. They are required one space for every 350 net square feet of commercial as well. So I'll get to a little bit more of the good stuff. So they are proposing to install the improvements along Commerce Drive, which can include, the, I believe, 8-foot park strip and 7-foot sidewalk. Or they can opt in to do the on-street parking with a 7-foot sidewalk, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number. And so they are proposing to do that. This building does front right on Commerce Drive and would meet those setbacks there. There is quite a bit of grade change there, and we'll go over that here in a second. This map kind of shows more the amenities area, the amenity space. There's quite a bit of amenity area in here. This located here is proposed as a yoga area. These are pickleball courts and kind of an open area. And this is kind of like the diamond there. Has three, it's a multi-tiered level of, there's a top tier here with gardens, seating areas, things like that. And then you come into the first pool deck and then a second pool deck that goes another level below. And then some elevations here for you. These are the east and west elevations. So this is what you would see on the Commerce side, kind of going down the hill there. And this would be kind of that back side along Bonnie View, along that new loop. I apologize, I should have addressed that as well. This does include the connection of Bonnie View, which currently ends about here. And it will provide a connection looping this through and connecting back to Commerce Drive. That was a requirement by fire and engineering to make sure that is for emergency access and traffic mitigation, things like that. Here are north-south elevations. This again would be on that side of Bonnie View. This, however, would be kind of on that side of Erickson. This is kind of where you would see Commerce and Erickson right here. All right, a couple bird eye elevations. Again, showing along Commerce on this side. This obviously doesn't show the installed improvements, so it's kind of just rough right there. But you get kind of a sense. This would be expanded a little bit further. And then we kind of addressed this a little bit, but this is the underground parking level. And as you can see, that amenity with the pool space here. Then you go up to another level of parking with that ground floor commercial as well. And then that second level of amenity there. And then you also have your commercial, leasing office, and commercial along here as well. And then levels 2 through 6 would be pretty much laid out this way. This would be 2, obviously, with these amenities. And then as you get up higher, you wouldn't have those decks. But it's a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units along these 4 corridors. Rendering for you here, showing kind of what the project is proposed to look like. So I wanted to address, I apologize for jumping all over the place here. I wanted to address the utilities specifically this project is required to have a 10-inch water line upgrade. Currently, there is, I believe, a 4-inch line here along Commerce Drive. The water department is saying that it can't be serviced with fire flows for a project of this size. So so they'll need to be working with the water department and our public works department to install something there. Also, I wanted to address just a quick couple, or the traffic. We did receive a traffic report on this traffic study. It actually estimated 300 multifamily units, and with this one only being 285. It did address that, and as a condition, you'll see as I get in there and not mess up the slideshow. So as part of the recommendations, the engineering requirements, specifically 1G, states provide a traffic impact study and implement recommendations. Part of those recommendations will be addressed as part of that. So with that, we are recommending approval of the mixed use project, subject to the 7 conditions laid out here. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commission members, questions for staff?
No.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to ask if the applicant is with us this evening.
So,
Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
is this an appropriate time that I just asked the staff to discuss if they've discussed this with Murray School District and they feel this can be
Sure.
just so the public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So public notice was given to, sent out to all the major utility companies as well as the school district. And we have not received any comments regarding that at this time.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll see if the applicant is with us this evening and ask him to just acknowledge himself.
Hi there. We're right here.
Hi. Thanks for being here this evening. Do you, first of all, we wanted to get out of the way that you obviously have seen the conditions that are part of the application this evening. Are you folks prepared to meet those conditions as part of this development?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the presentation before we see if there's questions from the commission for you?
Yeah, I've prepared a few remarks if that's okay.
Excellent. Please.
My name is
Oh, and you know what? Let me ask just if you would give your name and address for the record. That's part of our normal procedure.
Please. My name's Dan Bishop. I live at 44 Wanderwood Way, Sandy, Utah, 84092. I'm Eric Bishop's son and development partner. He and I are grateful for the opportunity to present to you our urban infill mixed-use development project, Bonnie View Apartments. A successful mixed-use development is thoughtfully designed to engage and encourage a positive pedestrian urban experience, which we believe our submission embodies the spirit of the newly amended mixed-use zone. We worked closely with Zach and Jared and other members of the Murray City staff, and we want to applaud them in their process. We think they've done a great job. It's been a very positive experience working with them. They're total professionals. And we also want to thank the Planning Commission for proceeding with this meeting despite the challenging circumstances that we're all facing right now. When our pioneer family walked here in 1860, they settled 60 acres on what is now the conglomerate of car dealerships on State Street in Murray. You may know Stauffer Lane, which was named after members of our family. I'm a proud 6th generation member of the Bishop family that was born in Murray. My grandfather, Arthur Bishop, spent most of his career working in the Murray City School District. My point in sharing this with you is that both Eric and I have deep Murray roots, and we're profoundly committed to the successful redevelopment of the newly amended mixed-use zone in Murray. The staff report is very well written, and we appreciate the positive recommendation. As additional context to the report, please accept the following comments in response to the conclusion recommendation section on pages 10 and 11. Item 1, Section B. Commerce Drive and Bonneview Avenue are functioning public roads with various city improvements in the roadways, and they are also maintained by the city. The dedication of Commerce Drive and Bonneview Avenue and any improvements that may be required will be system improvements that will benefit and be used by the public at large. For this reason, the improvements are referenced in a draft reimbursement agreement that we have submitted to the city, as I'll address later. Item 1, Section C, we're still in the process of finalizing an updated ALTA survey on the Bonneview property. To date, it remains unclear regarding who owns Erickson Avenue. Although the Bonneview site has recorded access rights through Erickson Avenue to the west, the looped road connection along Erickson Avenue and its dedication is contingent on the final determination of ownership. Item 4, the 10-inch water line upgrade on Commerce Drive is listed as a necessary system improvement and pipe replacement in the city's Water Master Plan dated August 2017. The Water Master Plan indicates the individual list of improvements was prioritized based on input from city personnel. There was no redevelopment slated in August 2017 along Commerce Drive. The development of Bonneview Apartments and other developments in the area increased the need for the upgraded water line. We believe the system improvement merits a significantly higher priority on the city's list of projects. Page 61 of the Water Master Plan indicates that the city currently spends $1.7 million per year for pipe replacement. The conclusion on page 83 recommends the annual budget of at least $2.9 million per year to fund water capital improvement projects identified in the report. As the upgraded water line is a city system improvement, we have submitted a draft reimbursement agreement regarding the system improvement to Danny Astle, and we're awaiting contact from the city attorney's office regarding this matter. We look forward to working with the city on this agreement over the next few weeks, and we're confident that we'll be able to reach an agreement. Again, thank you for your support. We're confident that the Bonneview Apartments will be a beautiful project and a positive addition to this area targeted for redevelopment by the city. We believe it'll also have a very positive impact on the Murray Central Station and City Center redevelopment. Thank you, and we'll be able to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. That was well done. Commission members, questions for our applicant? Dead silence. Lisa, did you have any questions?
Well, I think our questions can be discussed within our discussion, not directly to the applicant, correct? I think our discussion about
Sure.
the trash can, and then discussion about the 4 items that they might have problems with in the condition.
Sure. And again, this is preliminary approval as well. It's not final, and so we can ask anything we want, or we can close this portion right now and just bring it back up for general council discussion if it doesn't seem that there are any other council comments. So let's do that.
Is there a chance? My name's Eric Bishop, also at 44 Wanderwood Way in Sandy, Utah. Is there a chance for us to address some of these questions that we heard earlier on during your pre-meeting?
I think the same questions are going to be part of our discussion now, and we will give you every opportunity to talk about those once we have those.
We just as a side note, we have that's also tuned in architects from FFKR,
okay,
Larry Curtis and Preston Dean, who are also available to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, you know what? If you would like to answer any concerns you had concerning our discussion in that pre-meeting, I think that's appropriate, is it not, Zach?
Yeah. They can definitely. I mean, this is a good time. To allow you guys to ask.
That may save quite a bit of extended conversation on our part as well. So please go ahead.
There was question about the water line costs, and I think Dan in his remarks addressed that. that's something that's also addressed in the city water master plan. So I think we've covered that, unless there are other questions related to that still.
No.
Okay. Preston, would you mind introducing yourself and talking a little bit about the trash, compactor and the whole way that we've thought about trash? There was a concern about a need for a second trash bin on the north end of the development. But would you take a minute, Preston, and talk a little bit about that and your experience in design?
Yeah, we are. This is Preston Dean with FFKR Architects. We have, in projects this size, we're finding, and even especially in more urban areas, that owners are opting to do a trash. What's the word I'm thinking of?
Valet.
Valet, yeah.
Yes.
Trash pickup, and so, and that's kind of, I think, the direction that we're going here, just because of the limitations with the grade and trying to get access into a place to pick up trash in an enclosure. Where we've located it is, we're kind of doubling up with loading, unloading, entrance into the parking. It's right off of our looped Erickson, and it seems to, after working with the civil engineer, it seems to work out the best with the site and the building, getting to the building. We'd entertain any other concerns that you may have regarding that, but that's what's driving the direction that we've gone from the design.
And valet service is completely valid. It is becoming more and more popular with large developments in that. I could see how that would work. That they would just have to work out the details, whether you have to have the containers on site for them to throw the trash into, or they would take it off site as they collect it. There's a lot of options there. So, and a lot of companies out there that will do that.
It is our intention to use a trash compactor, but we certainly will involve experts in this and make sure that we've got the proper coverage. By no means do we want any of the associated smells or problems that come with unattended trash. So we certainly will address that.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're on top of that, and that shouldn't be a concern. So any other items that were discussed in pre-meeting that may have concerned you or you have additional details on, sir?
Yeah, there were two additional items. One was the restriping on Commerce. That came from a traffic report done by Joe Perrin with A-Trans Transportation Engineering. And so the recommendations that the city engineer, Trey, put forward in the report, as well as in the recommendations, all came out of that traffic report. And this kind of leads into the next question that came up about possible concerns about congestion and density. As the traffic engineer studied this area, it was clear that there was no given the traffic that was assumed with 300 units, which is again over what we're proposing, that there would be no significant impact on existing infrastructure. So there's not a need to upgrade any of the stop lights, do additional upgrades to intersections, because the traffic will not be that significant.
Right.
Now, I'm not trying to downplay that. I understand that again, 285 units will generate traffic. But again, from a traffic engineer standpoint, the system and the infrastructure that's in place, the roadways and intersections, should be able to handle that without requiring any additional upgrades.
Right. We are not traffic engineers. And so, we do have to rely on the traffic studies presented to us and the recommendation of the city engineer. And as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of your get out of jail free card. We have no substance to argue with that. So that is in your favor.
The other issues on congestion.
Mr. Bishop, can I make a comment real quick before we move to the next one? In the pre-meeting, we had discussed that. It was item E1E, and how it sounded like a suggestion, not a directive. But after rereading it, just to complete that conversation, I think it's well written how it is, because step 1 says these requirements will be met, and then A through I is listed. So I think it's well stated. So I think we're okay there.
Okay, great. The last thing that I wanted to just address again back to congestion, this project will be similar to the Murray Crossing, which again is in this zone. The zoning in this area really was intended for redevelopment and for the improvement of the area, which I think is really well founded since it's a traffic-oriented development or transit-oriented development and urban development to take advantage of the Murray Central Station. So I think I know some of the concerns that were mentioned about congestion and density really are addressed with the land use decisions that have been made here in the way of zoning and the general plan and the vision that was intended for this area. I think we're, again, very consistent with what those documents and the intent of those documents are with the density we have. We do have one issue that again, when you think in terms of density and land use, and that is the freeway that's just immediately west of this site, which generates a significant amount of noise and light pollution. We feel like, again, this high density use is really one of the best uses in that area, given the constraints of other surrounding land uses. So I don't know if that helps or not from a standpoint of at least the density and congestion, but again, the roads will accommodate it per the traffic study, and it's clearly consistent with other developments occurred in the area and with the zoning and the master plan for the areas as well. And frankly, in order to have a transit-oriented urban development like this, that's how you achieve it. So I hope that that's at least some respectful thoughts as you continue with that part of the discussion later on.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, I will. I'll bring it back up to the commission now. We have a public comment period, and so for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to open public comment, and we will take 2 to 3 minutes to see if staff receives some emails regarding this. If I'm correct, Jared, we have not seen any emails in advance of this application. Is that correct?
That's correct. I did receive I did receive one phone call earlier today, but it was mostly questions about the mixed use zone in general,
okay.
And not specifically this project.
Okay.
He was just alerted by this project and had questions about mixed use.
Great. So. All right. Well, with that, I'll open the meeting this agenda item for public comment, and we'll take a couple of minutes and see what the public brings. Thank you.
Perfect. And I'm just going to chime in real quick, and anybody that's listening, any citizens, there is an email address listed on the feed there. It's planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. If you'd like to submit any comments there, that would be helpful, and then we can address them in this meeting. So,
all right, thank you. Do you have any Lawrence Welk mood music or anything to play?
I know, I wish.
Okay. Well, we'll just have awkward silence for a couple.
Yeah, awkward silence. You could bring your dog back in. That would be fine.
I think she's sleeping, and we will let sleeping dogs lie.
We could discuss where Brian is. Brian, where are you?
He's there somewhere.
Mr. Farnsworth?
Yeah.
He's there.
Where are you today?
No guesses?
I don't know where he is.
I think it's a judiciary building.
It is. It's in London.
London.
It's Old Bailey's.
Nice. The weather looks great.
Yeah.
I walked my backyard today, so I've been to some pretty incredible places.
Hopefully you had a mask on.
Not in my backyard, I didn't.
There, I switched mine to San Francisco, so it's something exciting.
There you go.
Beautiful sunset.
No comments.
Yeah, I think you're okay to shut this one down.
All right.
I checked all the feeds and there's only about 9 people watching, including me.
All right.
So
With that, I will close the public comment portion of this item and bring it back up to commission members for more discussion, questions among members, or a motion if you see fit.
Before there's a motion, can I just ask for clarification?
Absolutely.
For me and for the record, I guess. So there's a couple items that the applicant's not confident that they can comply with in the conditions or are pending a draft reimbursement agreement. But this is a preliminary. So we're saying if we approve this, it's with the existing conditions and they can be discussed further at the final. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, actually, let me jump in real quick. So this is just a conditional use permit. So there is not a preliminary and final.
Okay, yeah, conditional. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this is it. So the conditions are the conditions. If they can't meet the conditions, they can't go forward. So even though they've submitted that I can't think of the word. But
reimbursement,
yeah, that draft reimbursement form. We kind of just glazed over it real quick in the pre-meeting. It's their responsibility to install the 10-inch water line. If they get that draft, if that agreement pans out, that's great, and they can work with the city to do that.
Right.
However, that's part of the conditions. That has to be installed, or it can't go forward.
Right.
But then just a question, point of order. So I understand if we pass it with the existing conditions and then some, either the draft reimbursement agreements go through, then they don't have to come back to us again, even though the conditions have technically changed because they're not meeting our condition. The agreement changed.
No, the conditions, the condition wouldn't change because it's not a condition that agreement be signed. It's the only condition is that they install a 10-inch water line from Commerce Drive that connects to Vine Street. I don't care. We don't care as staff how it gets installed, just as long as it gets installed.
Yeah, they're trying to get the city to participate with them, Lisa, based on the city water department master plan projections for the future. Whether the city does that or not, that's to their benefit. But all we are concerned with is that those necessary improvements are made.
Okay, then how does that also apply to number C, where we're talking about they're required to do a loop with Erickson Drive?
Yeah.
If their property does not own Erickson Drive, this would all fall apart and they have to start over again with us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, in a short answer, yeah, they would have to come back to you to amend that, or they would have to work with the property owner that owns Erickson to work that out.
Bottom line is that road's got to be looped.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Yeah. No problem.
I guess I have a concern about the water line as well as having, the draft reimbursement agreement, because the 10-inch water line is something that directly benefits their apartment complex. And I'm not sure that the taxpayers at large should be, saddled with that expense, because isn't that ultimately where it comes out of, is the city budget?
Well,
that's all a negotiation item for the city.
Yeah, that's something that the city would have to. That's not something that we would really get involved in.
Okay.
Because there's fiduciary kind of stuff is just not that's going to be the council the city council that deals with that one.
Okay, perfect.
Do we know, is it coming from Vine Street or 4800 South? Do we know that?
Vine.
Okay.
Vine. Okay.
Yeah, Vine Street.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns right now? Okay.
Can I just say that this is the kind of project that is designed to go into this area. It is multi, this is what this area has been designed for. And This really is now a northern cornerstone that will continue this area to grow out in this pattern. A lot of the industrial properties back in there are old industrial properties that are just waiting for someone to consolidate a few lots and build projects like this. The streets will take care of themselves over time. They get the benefit of being in early where maybe traffic isn't as big an issue, but you still have the whole east side of the road that needs to be addressed in some capacity. I can't see this going in a better location than it is going in. It is buttresses by I-15. That property is not desirable. It's industrial for a reason. The highway was built there for a reason. This is changing that for our city, and I think it's to our benefit. Even though some people have in the past suggested we'd be strung up for projects in this area, this is what this area is destined to become, and I encourage us to continue to see the vision that's been laid out for us for a number of years.
Well, and Travis, I will say this, as far as this project goes, I don't think we could ask for a higher quality project at this time. And also, they are not coming in maxing out all of the zoning requirements and the density and everything. They are presenting really a best case development, in my opinion.
Yes.
With what the property must have cost them, and in order to make this work for them long term. So I agree with you completely that this area has been sitting. We've seen those steps going up to nowhere in front of the old Bonneview school site for
there's a
20
beautiful evergreen tree at the top of those stairs. Just one tree up there.
Things changed.
Well, I would agree with both of you. It's a perfect site. It's got great proximity to the light rail and commuter rail stations, and short, 5-minute walk at best. And I think it's going to be a great asset to that corner of Murray.
All right.
And it's establishing a whole new residential district in the city that is an urban district, but it's going to be a nice urban district. The projects that have gone in so far have been high quality projects. They're not just going in and throwing up stick frames, 3-story buildings. These guys are putting a real investment into the city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've known this, type of thing was coming for a long time. And so I think we just need to manage it the best we can.
I guess,
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, real quick. I guess I should say for the record, I agree with what's been said. I do think this is a valuable project for our area. I'm not one of the biggest fans on high density, but this is where it belongs, and this is being done correctly, and I appreciate it. That's, I guess, why I was asking the questions about the conditions, because I'd like to see a nice project be able to continue.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit to allow the proposed mixed-use development on the properties addressed 4955, 4984, 4994, 5002, and 5020 South Commerce Drive, subject to the following conditions 1 through 7.
Thank you.
I will second that.
And
I'll second it.
Travis will second. All right. I have a motion by Ned Hacker and a second by Travis Ney that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit to allow the proposed mixed-use development on the properties addressed 4955, 4984, 4994, 5002, and 5020 South Commerce Drive, subject to conditions 1 through 7 as presented to us this evening. Call for a vote, please.
I don't see you all, so I don't. Okay, let's try.
We're all here, so it doesn't
matter. Ned, Commissioner
Yes.
Hacker?
Yes.
Commissioner Ney?
Yes.
Commissioner Milkovich?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodbury?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Markham?
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. We will be watching very closely.
Thank you very much. All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is a subdivision project. And this is preliminary approval for a subdivision project. I apologize for getting Lisa off track on that last one there. That was my fault. This is Meadows of Murray, located between 533 and 525 East on Winchester Street, and it's preliminary subdivision review for 26 lots, and these are twin homes.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Markham. So this, as you said, is a preliminary subdivision approval, preliminary subdivision application for twin homes. I'm just going to go over a couple of items quickly for the background. These are the properties that were listed there. There are a number of properties. We oftentimes talk about consolidation of properties, lot consolidations being a condition of approval. In this case, the subdivision plat that gets recorded would remove all of these existing parcels and create the necessary plat. But you do have all of them located there, as you said, roughly between 525 East, and this is Castlefield Lane on the east side, Winchester on the south. This property's been vacant for a number of years. It was recently rezoned to RNB, Residential Neighborhood Business. Lots of times in the residential neighborhood business zone, we see light duty retail, some offices, developments of that kind. In this case, Mr. Reynolds, Brad Reynolds, the applicant for the rezone, opted to ask for a twin home development. So the subdivision before you tonight is a result of that application. These 26 lots, as you referred to, are twin home lots. So on each particular lot, there is one side of a twin home. So for example, you can see the outline here of the area where we would allow a twin home to be with its appropriate setbacks. And the setback on the interior between one set of twin homes is a 0 lot line setback. So each one of these lots has a single twin home on it attached to another twin home. Smallest of the lots are just over 5,200 square feet. The minimum is 5,000 in our code in the RNB that was newly adopted. And the largest is almost 12,000 square feet up here at the back side, 11,750 square feet. So some of the lots do get quite large. These are not tiny lots, as you would see. They are all fee title lots that you can own as an individual. So if you buy from Brad Reynolds Construction the twin home that sits on lot 1, you would own that twin home and all the land around it up to that middle line right there. That's the point of this kind of development. So there are 26 lots, all of them individually ownable. The proposed right-of-way here, Fashion Island Cove, I believe we're going to call it Fashion Isle Cove. That's just a side note for fun if you're into that kind of thing. But right now, Fashion Island Cove, this is a cul-de-sac. It's publicly dedicated. There will be sidewalk, park strip, curb and gutter on both sides, and the travel lanes it's a standard, typical subdivision residential road for us. All the access will come from Winchester and 525 East and up Fashion Island Cove. There was some concern among neighbors that called in or emailed in, as you all saw in your packets, and we can get to that during a public comment portion. But most of the concerns from the neighbors were not about the development being twin homes. They all kind of seemed to feel like that was an appropriate development, but rather had to do with the traffic that might be generated from those homes into their neighborhood or out through here, 525 East into Winchester. There is not a traffic study on this project. It was not asked for by the city engineer because it's only 26 lots. We don't usually look at asking for traffic studies until we're looking at 30 lots or more. We don't ask for secondary accesses until we get to 30 lots. And so since it doesn't meet those qualifications, we did not ask for those things. The engineer didn't feel that they were appropriate. Planning agrees. I want to show you just a couple of things here. We talked about the ownability or the owner occupancy potential for these lots. This is item, for example, lot 1, you could own that side and own the property around it. This is a site plan. It's illustrative. It's not really part of the subdivision itself. It's just that we wanted to show that you could easily locate the kinds of units that Mr. Reynolds wants to build on these properties with the appropriate driveways and setbacks, et cetera, on these properties. We do have grading and drainage plans. The city engineer has been over, and they've made some they've already made some changes to these to meet his requirements. Utility planning, all the utilities will come from Winchester Street, 525 East. They all seem appropriate for these uses. And then again, this is not a PUD, a planned unit development of any kind, but for illustrative purposes only, Mr. Reynolds has provided some plans for the kinds of units he thinks would be good fits here and plans to build front elevation of one of the potential types of units, right elevations, left elevations, and we do have some renderings I want to show you as well. The rear elevations. These are nice units, a lot of high quality materials and good construction. One of the reasons that that Brad Reynolds Construction wanted to make that text amendment proposal that they did make successfully just recently was so that they could put more money into the homes themselves, as opposed to building duplexes, which are by nature more attractive to investors as investment properties instead of to individual homeowners. So just some examples of the kinds of units that they're looking at building. We are recommending approval of the preliminary subdivision for Meadows of Murray with these conditions that you see listed. One of the conditions, number 9, would be to prepare that final subdivision plat and comply with all of these issues. I do have to say, for the record, many of these have been met, and we're prepared to take in a final application at this time. We just, under our code, there's 26 lots. We don't do prelim and final in one shot if there's more than 10 lots proposed. So we'll be bringing it back later for a final application if it's approved for preliminary tonight. I mentioned the public comments, but we can talk about those further during the public comment portion if you'd like, or we can talk about the public comments now, depending on how the commission feels about questions. Any questions for staff at this point?
Jared, I would just like you to talk a little bit about the type of wall that we may see on, that we will see along Winchester, and also the involvement of the city engineer with traffic study.
Perfect. I appreciate that, Phil. Thank you. So there are 2 fences proposed. The entire perimeter is proposed to be fenced. Everything but Winchester would be fenced with a 6-foot masonry wall as proposed. Winchester would be fenced with an 8-foot masonry wall because of our code requirements for double frontage lots. When we dedicate Fashion Island Cove, all of these lots here will be double frontage lots, and Winchester is a major collector, so we're allowed to do and ask for an 8-foot masonry wall. Brad Reynolds Construction has agreed to that and plans to put that up. Of course, it does have to drop in areas here or angles so that we have clear view from 525 East, but all along these portions, you'll see an 8-foot masonry wall, 6-foot masonry wall on the rest of it. Those will be included with the improvements for the subdivision. When Fashion Island Cove goes in, the curb and gutter and sidewalk, you'll see those walls start to come up. Phil, you mentioned city engineers' involvement with traffic.
Yes. Yeah.
So as I mentioned, there's not a traffic study for this project. He did not require that, and we didn't require that either. The feeling being that the traffic generated from his simple calculations from these 26 units is not going to be anything that will overwhelm the use of 525 East as a typical residential road. Fashion Island Cove will very much mirror the road at 525 East, and we do have this intersection with Winchester Street, so it's likely that the traffic won't be an impact to this area. We don't usually require those until we hit at least 30 lots. So.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Any other questions for staff at this time?
I have a question, but my question is about the irrigation system, but I was wondering also if Jared wanted to expand upon what he just said about traffic and a second entrance, what the city engineers has said about that.
Yeah.
And then also you say something about the irrigation system and it being abandoned. With the ditch company?
Thank you. Yeah, the ditch company, there is an old irrigation line that needs to be abandoned. I believe that's already in the works with Brad Reynolds. I didn't work on that with the city engineer and Brad Reynolds, but I think Ryan could probably speak to that when it's time for the applicant to talk, probably better than I could. As far as the second access, I'm going to go back to the site plan real quickly and just show you one thing. So there's kind of 2 parts to that. The first part is what we talked about already. 30 units is kind of the magic number for residential structures on lots. For 30 lots, I keep saying units. Think about it as 30 lots. We're only at 26. The second part of it is that Winchester Street here is a high volume major collector. Probably at this point, when it gets reclassified in the new master transportation plan, it'll probably be reclassified as a minor arterial as opposed to a major collector. That depends on its size and its volume. If we were to, for example, as one of the public comments came in and asked for a second access out to Winchester Street, because we don't reach that standard, we don't reach that threshold of 30 lots to ask for that other access. And the other access potential is to a major collector where we're trying to control accesses, manage accesses. the city engineer was very adamant that we not take a second access to Winchester Street, and planning agrees wholeheartedly. In many, many cases, we like connections wherever we can get them. On a major collector like Winchester, and as close as that access might be to either 525 East or Castlefield Lane, it would be inappropriate. If there were more units, we'd have to look at some other options, but with less than 30 units, not on the table for us.
Thank you. And any other questions for staff?
Can I just make a general comment?
Absolutely.
This is one time where I think I disagree with the 8-foot wall. I feel like this stretch of Winchester, yes, it's a busy road. It's surrounded by neighborhoods and people walk it. And we kind of want this zone to even be walkable and to be pleasant for the pedestrian. And I just feel like an 8-foot wall for this entire stretch really kills this stretch of Winchester for the pedestrian. I understand why we're doing it, but I almost wish we had a way to not have to defer to an 8-foot wall on an arterial road like this, where a pedestrian experience is supposed to be considered.
It's a good point, and I don't disagree with it. I'm just probably on both sides of that fence. No pun intended.
Yeah.
So, both sides of the 8-foot masonry wall. It's a tough one.
I usually would agree with it, but for here, I don't. I don't know why.
Can we just put a condition that says that it can be open to graffiti and street artists to make it a little better?
There you are, Mr. Woodbury. Nice to have you join the meeting.
I finally figured out my sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to invite the applicant to join the meeting and state his name and address for the record, and just present any additional information that he would like to at this time, and we'll have a chance to ask him questions.
Yeah, I'm here. Ryan Reynolds. I live at 5230 South Wander Lane in Holiday, 84117. We'd just like to first off thank staff for helping us with the text amendment in order to do these twin homes. We're really appreciative of that. As you can see, it's 26 high quality twin homes. Brad's been building these homes for over 30 years. We've built hundreds of these units. They sell well. And as many of you might know, we actually already have 2 other projects going in Murray. We love working in Murray, and we look forward to doing more if this does pass. I know there was a question about the irrigation system along Winchester Street. We are planning on vacating that, and getting rid of it. Yeah, if there's any other questions I can answer at this time, I'd be happy.
I do have to ask you if you have had a chance to see the 9 conditions and think about those and agree that you can meet those conditions as they're listed.
Yes, I have looked at them and we are willing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for the applicant?
Not for the applicant, but for you, Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I think I know the answer, but just to clarify, is there a sidewalk planned along Winchester along that 8-foot masonry fence?
I believe there's a sidewalk presently, but Jared, do you want to address that?
Sure, thanks. And yes, so when they put in the 8-foot fence, there is a sidewalk on Winchester right now. It may need upgrading. That's all part of the engineering work that would happen out there. I think it's actually in pretty good shape, but that's part of the engineer's approval when he does that final plat. We'll look at those improvements and exactly what they need to be and make sure that if it does need to be replaced or widened at all, we would do that at that time. I do believe, though, that it's actually already in place and in pretty good shape.
I agree with Mr. Ney. The 8-foot brick wall along there is kind of bland. It takes away from the walkability of the area, but I'm glad there's still a sidewalk. And Mr. Woodbury's suggestion about graffiti artists, maybe we could just recommend a mural put in before the graffiti artists get there.
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, unless there are any questions, all right, I'm going to close that portion of the agenda item, and we will go to our public comment portion. I'll open the meeting up for public comment for this agenda item. And Jared, did you want to, would you please mention the emails that we have received thus far?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So We have, and the Planning Commission has received several emails, and I wanted to make sure that as we open the public comment portion, we refer to those. Make sure I get to them here. Sorry, 1 second. We did receive an email from David Eckhoff and Carolyn Stephens that the concerns from them in that related to the traffic and the lack of a secondary access that we talked about in the presentation here, based on the traffic and the increased trips from the new units. We also received a comment, an email from John and Jeanette Bowen, recognizing that, and this comment was basically an email expressing support for the project, and that it would be a good fit for the neighborhood and be acceptable to them. They were supportive of that. We did also receive a comment email from Tina Hodgson, opposed to the project because of the lack of secondary access and because the loss of green space and open space and traffic problems from the project, creating issues on the streets to the north and on Winchester Street. And then also an email from Aaron Satoff, again, with concerns about traffic, maybe that a semaphore should be installed at the intersection of 525 East and Winchester Street. And then concerns about the traffic volume generated by the new vehicles from the new townhomes. I believe that Susan has a couple of additional comments that have come in since the time that we sent out the packet where you received those comments. Do you want to have Susan read those into the record to begin the public comment
Yes,
period?
if we could, please, because we,
Right.
as commission members, we did receive the entire text of those emails that you just summarized for us. So I did want to mention that we all individually did receive copies of the entire emails.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. So we'll have Susan read those in now then.
Okay, we did receive 2 emails prior to the packets going out a week ago. The first one was received from Wendy Butler. This was received on Sunday, April 12th. Her email states, "Dear Planning Commission members, thank you all for allowing us to comment via email during the state's Stay Safe, Stay Home directive. As a resident homeowner who lives very close to the proposed construction off Winchester Street, I would like to comment. My husband and I own our home at 6332 South, 530 East, which is just around the corner from here. My parents bought this home from the builder in 1960. I would like to see something nice built on the property in question and feel that Brad Reynolds will produce a quality product that adds to the neighborhood. I am fine with everything that he has proposed in the distributed site plan, except the road access to the properties. I propose that you mandate that the entrance and exit to the new homes occur from Winchester Street, where there is already 4 lanes and a turn lane, instead of 525 East, which is, of course, a small 2-way residential street. Living where we do, right on the corner of 530 East and 6340 South, we know that 525 East, continuing on to 530 East, is already a busy road with traffic levels that were not intended for neighborhood traffic. Many people cut off from Winchester, avoiding the mall area, to travel through neighborhoods to areas on State Street heading north. If your commission allows the traffic generated from 26 homes solely to be directed onto 525 East, we will be inundated with even more traffic. As I sit in my living room typing this, I look out on the curve and see this intersection and have seen cars going around that bend where no stop is required. Just about every car making that turn goes at a speed that takes them into the oncoming lane of traffic as they pass right in front of my house. Additionally, At the end of our road is Longview Elementary, so 525 East is a busy pedestrian road in the mornings and afternoon with children walking to school. There is no doubt that the increased number of homes will increase traffic in the area. I am just asking that by having that traffic funneled off on Winchester, that the extra traffic in our neighborhood streets can be buffered. I think it would be nice to have a footpath opening onto 525 East, but not a vehicular exit. Sincerely, Wendy Butler. And then the other email was received today, April 16th at 4 p.m. This is from Candy Robinson. To Murray City Planning Commission, my name is Candy Robinson, and I live at 528 East, 6340 South. I have lived here for 20 years and grew up a few blocks away. There is a concern with me, as many of my neighbors, and that is the entrance to this new community on 525 East. This street off of Winchester is already very busy with families taking their children to and from the elementary school located a few blocks north on 6270 South. Other residents have voiced these same concerns in the previous meetings. I don't see why the entrance to this new community can't be on Winchester Street. Our neighborhood is a very quiet one, and I think all of this new traffic entering on 525 East will change that. I am looking forward to a new development that has been on an empty field for too many years. Thank you, Candy Robinson. And then let me just check to see if by chance we've received any more. There are no other public comments submitted so far.
With that, I will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. And Jared, do you care to address any of those concerns that were brought up? We could also ask the applicant if it's appropriate.
Sure. I don't know that I could address them in any way that we haven't already sort of addressed them, to be honest.
Okay.
They're the comments that were on our mind as we wrote the staff report, as we compiled the comments that were coming in, and it's not something that we didn't look at. This just this sort of longer cul-de-sac from 525 feels like the most appropriate thing from a planning and engineering standpoint.
Okay. And does the applicant have anything he would like to add based on that public comment?
We'd just like to say that we agree with the engineering staff that that with it only being 26 lots, we don't feel like it would be much of a hurt to have the entrance come on to 525 East. Again, just reiterating the safety concern of having it come out and having Castlefield Lane right there, and also 525 East as a concern if it was coming out for safety concerns of turning onto that road. But we agree with staff that we would agree that we would like it to have it come out on 525 East.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll bring this item back up to commission members, and I would just like to add just one brief comment before we continue the discussion on this. I've come to really appreciate the opinion of our city engineer, and when necessary, when he references traffic engineers specifically, because a project may be outside of his scope. But in my immediate neighborhood, I've seen an impact of approximately 100 homes going in over the last year and a half. And we had a lot of concerns as a commission here concerning traffic and road improvements and so forth. And I have to admit that everything that the city engineer and the Associated Traffic Studies said, it has worked out. And I'm extremely pleased with the development in my area. I didn't think I would ever say that, but it's really enhanced my immediate area, and I don't I would never be comfortable in questioning the decision that these folks have made. Any other comments, or if no further discussion, we can always have a motion. It is up to the commission.
I think it's important to point out too, though, that the city has a standard of 30 units. This doesn't meet that standard. So we are being fair and just to developers and saying, this is our threshold. You come in under that threshold. It's something that we're not going to force you to do. I mean, I think there's a policy in place and it's a clear line. It's not arbitrary. This project gets it, that project doesn't get it. There's either above or below 30. And I think that needs to be acknowledged.
I agree.
Hey, Phil, I think, like you, I live in the same area, have seen very negligible traffic increase. I don't think it's adversely affected the area at all. And so I like you, I trust the traffic engineers, even though at times as a resident, sometimes we think that we may think, they're not over here, they don't live here, they don't see the impact on a daily basis, they're just using data. But the reality is they're pretty good at what they do, and I think we do have to trust them. I think the other point, and there was a comment made about a desire for greater open space. I think we all share that concern and that sentiment. We would certainly love to have more open space in the city, but open space comes at a cost. And obviously, the landowner has the right to develop it according to the city codes and the city guidelines. And if they don't want to buy it and donate it and make it a green space, there's really not a lot we can do about it. So I think this is a great development. I think it fits in the neighborhood and fully supportive of it.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion?
I think too, this is a good development. We've all wondered for years when we would see that property develop. I think this looks good. It should blend in pretty well with the surrounding community. And as far as traffic, another entrance or only one entrance, which would be out onto Winchester, I think that would be much more difficult to agree to versus putting the traffic out onto the side street first and then onto Winchester. Much more.
Well, I agree, Ned. And if a development that was proposed for this site did necessitate an access onto Winchester, that would mean that it's significantly commercial in some aspect. Now, I know that this is residential neighborhood business in that, but we've had other projects proposed for this area that were met with a lot of opposition from the area and staff, frankly. And this represents a wonderful compromise, I think. And I really want to trust the experts in this area. They've not failed us thus far in the time that I've been on the commission. All right. Anyone see fit for a motion, or do we need to continue discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that the Planning Commission grant preliminary subdivision approval for the Meadows of Murray subdivision on the properties addressed 6363 South, 525 East, and 533, 551, 565, 583, 593, and 631 East Winchester, subject to the 9 conditions.
I'll second.
All right. Sue has the second. I have a motion by Maren Patterson, a second by Sue Wilson, that the Planning Commission grant preliminary subdivision approval for the Meadows of Murray subdivision on the properties addressed 6363 South, 525 East, and 533, 551, 565, 583, 593, and 631 East Winchester Street, subject to the 9 conditions presented in the application this evening. Call for vote, please.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Ms. Milkevich?
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
Mr. Ney?
Yes.
And Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Thank
Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. We'll be watching closely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Our final agenda item for this evening is a discussion item, Fashion Place West Small Area Plan. And it's an update on the project that we had an open house on a couple of months ago, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, we had an open house on it just recently. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to have Mark Morris. He's the lead consultant on this. I'm going to let him kind of speak to it, and then he also has he'll present a slideshow as well. So
wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Welcome, Mr. Morris.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm here with Annalise Eichelberger, and just wanted to give you an update on the development of the Fashion Place West Small Area Plan. A little bit of an update on the open house, which happened on February 15th, I believe, and give you kind of a roadmap on kind of next steps as far as our process goes. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt. I'm going to try and share my screen and see if that works. All right, can you see my presentation?
Just your name. Oh,
no.
Now we see Annalise.
Okay, can you see? Trying to see what's going on.
Mark, there's a two-part screen share. Like you have to hit share screen a couple different times.
Oh, gotcha. Let's see. I'll go back.
Pick your screen, and then you have to select the screen, and then
gotcha.
hit.
Okay, did that get us there?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Are the settings such that he is allowed to share his screen?
That's what I'm checking on that right now to make sure.
Yeah. Do you have a participants can share screen option?
Yeah, it says that it's on. Allow participants to share screen. I'm going to turn it off, and then I'm going to turn it back on. That's always the IT thing to do. So let's try this real quick.
Ticket comes after that.
Yeah. Hey.
Ta-da.
Oh
yeah. Turned it off and turned it back on.
Nice.
That's usually the right answer.
Nice
Great.
job.
So you can see my presentation, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So just wanted to spend a few minutes, like I mentioned, give you a little bit of an overview of the existing conditions report. I believe that was included in your packets. Is that correct, Zach?
No, I didn't actually put it in the packet.
It would be nice to have a copy of this.
Yeah, I can send one out for sure.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, we along with our sub-consultants with Fair and Piers transportation consultants have finished the first section of the small area plan, which is an existing conditions report. More than happy to share that with you. It's a little under 40 pages, and it covers just broad planning research on the area and kind of looking at problems and issues that need to be resolved as part of this this process. That existing conditions report, as I mentioned, it really starts with the development of the area from kind of early days of the city, looking at current zoning, current land use plans, any adopted documents that the city has on the books, as well as looking at traffic counts, transit use, all of those pieces. It's a long document. You are more than welcome to read through it. What we wanted to do was just pull out a few data points to talk to you about and kind of give you a really simplified snapshot of what we've been looking at. A couple demographic things that we found interesting when looking at this study area. The green on these charts are just the area that we're looking at. So the area in the immediate vicinity of the Fashion Place West TREX station. As you can see on the left, the median home value is significantly lower than the median home value for the rest of Murray City, which is roughly parallel to the values for the rest of the county. These are numbers from, I believe, last year, and so those have increased somewhat. Also, the median household income for this area is significantly lower than the rest of the city and the rest of the county by a pretty sizable margin. So we're looking at households that have less discretionary income, but are spending less on their housing costs compared to the rest of the city. Looking at these two maps, you can see the kind of limits of the study area. Fair and Peers has helped us to pull together some connectivity analysis to look at where the transportation networks have issues, and so we can again make a roadmap going forward for this area to make those improvements. The big driver of this project is dealing with connectivity. The map on the left there you see is given a sidewalk score to the area. The green is where we have high quality sidewalk infrastructure, no gaps, relatively few obstacles or conflict points. The single family residential areas, for the most part, do not have sidewalks. So you see there the red lines, and then the yellow is you have sidewalks present, but the sort of experience of using that sidewalk might be less than enjoyable. Of course, walking along State Street through this area is not exactly a pleasant experience. So the heat map on the right is looking at, if you're familiar with Strava, Strava is an app that cyclists often use to track their routes. That data then is put out into the world, and we can see where cyclists are, which networks they're using. So the map on the right, those yellow areas is where we see the highest amount of cycling activity, and the red areas are where there's less activity there. So you can see a lot of cyclists coming in to use we can assume use that track station, and a fair amount of cyclists going from that track station to the side of the Fashion Place Mall. So again, one of the drivers of this project, improving walkability and connectivity in this area. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to stop me as we go through. Looking at land use in this area, the chart on the right, you can see this area for the most part is almost 50% of it is completely residential. Most of those residential uses are the single family neighborhoods to the north and south of 215. There are a couple limited areas where we've got some multifamily housing a little bit further south of the study area. Industrial, all of those areas to the west of the rail corridor and east of I-15 are mostly light industrial, and then a little bit of other uses sprinkled in there to kind of see the ratio of uses within this area. And then finally, from the existing conditions plan, this is kind of a summary of sort of identifying where the issues are that need to be resolved as far as those connectivity networks go. So this includes all of the issues with bike infrastructure, issues with pedestrian infrastructure, issues with automotive infrastructure, just to kind of get the lay of the land all together on one map where we have some issues that need to be resolved. And again, this is in the longer version of the existing conditions plan that will make sure you have an opportunity to read through. A quick summary of the open house. We held an open house 12th of February at the Senior Center. and had a good turnout. We felt like it was well attended. We had people there for most of the time that we had the doors open, and this was really mostly informational to kind of get the neighborhood involved, answer questions about this particular project, and then pull them on sort of the issues that they see in their neighborhood that we would want to make sure get addressed. We estimated we had about 30 to 35 participants, mostly positive reactions. Many expressed the need for better connectivity. So that was good to hear, since that was one of the driving factors from the city's perspective as well. About half of the attendees lived within the study area, and the other half were either people who commuted through the area or other residents of the city. And easily the most frequent question we were asked is what development is being proposed. So everyone's certainly very curious about what will happen in the neighborhood in the next few years.
Can I just add real quick while you're talking?
Yeah, you bet.
2 slides back, seeing the pictures of the open house. I wish I could go do an open house again. There's people there, so I can actually interact with people. So
yeah, not a care in the world.
Feels like 3 years ago. Groups of people.
Does seem like a long time ago.
Just had to add that in.
Yeah. Let's see. A couple other things. Like I mentioned, we had a few boards where we asked people questions about just to kind of get their input on the neighborhood. We presented the city's 5 key initiatives from the general plan, which they felt were the most related to this particular neighborhood. The desire for livable and vibrant neighborhoods was the highest response, and then multimodality. People wanted to be able to navigate the neighborhood in a lot of different ways, as opposed to just in their vehicle. Types of destinations do you wish were in the neighborhood? Public space and parks was the top response. Dining opportunities and grocery and market were kind of the top 3 responses there. Another one of the questions we asked them was to kind of help them start thinking about in the next phase of life, what type of housing would you envision yourself living in? Highest response was single family home, followed by townhome and accessory dwelling units. So
the next phase of my life is going to be in the cemetery. So I don't know.
Well, that's pretty bleak, but I hope you get.
Well, I'm getting up there.
Hope you get some time before that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of give you an overview of the other sections of the document that we're preparing. So the document itself, in the end, will have 4 primary sections. So that existing conditions section, a housing section, connectivity, and then finally some design guidelines. We've been working through some housing analysis, both for Murray City and for the region, to start to understand what sort of obstacles are we seeing in this particular neighborhood as far as introduction of additional housing choices. So the next time we come back, we'll have that section pretty much in draft form, which will have some recommendations as to what part the city can play in kind of laying the groundwork for getting the types of development in this neighborhood that kind of aligns with the city's vision of the neighborhood's needs as well. So there's just a brief summary outline of those. Obviously looking at transit-oriented mixed-use development, urban mixed use, a mix of jobs and housing. So really looking at how do we integrate a lot of those things that are in the city's general plan as far as goals broadly for the city, and this area as kind of high opportunity for growth and change into the types of development that we'd like to see there. Housing market, as I'm sure you're well aware, is a hot button topic. Housing costs continue to increase year over year, and you can see with this chart on the left how a household is considered cost burdened if they're spending more than 30% of their monthly income on their housing. And every year, the number of cost-burdened households, not only in the county but also in Murray City, continue to increase. And that really is a product of a lack of housing supply, and also pretty flat as far as the growth of household incomes go. So that's something that, a city really has a large part to play in the providing of supply of housing, and the types of policies that the city adopts can have a big impact on that broadly. It's a pretty big chunk of households' monthly costs, and so anything we can do as a city to sort of mitigate that as much as possible is something that's going to have a real impact on individual households' kind of fragility or their ability to kind of do the things that they would like to do with having a little bit more discretionary income. The data point on the right, I also wanted to point out that when there was a poll done by the Kim Gardner Center at the University of Utah. Almost 95% of polled individuals felt like affordable housing was a major problem for Utah's continued economic growth. So it's a pretty, there aren't a lot of questions that people are asked where you get to a 95% support. So I think everyone really sees how affordability of housing impacts all of us, no matter who we are, no matter what we're doing, and we need to figure out a path forward. I think Murray City in particular, since you've got a lot of access to the transit system, you've been quite proactive in building a lot more variety of housing types in the city, which can have a big impact on that affordability question. So I guess the question for this area is how do we kind of continue that growth and do it in a way that is appropriate for the neighborhood and connects to, again, those city goals that you've adopted in the general plan. Another data point to point out, there's a walkability premium that people are willing to pay. So when you have a neighborhood that's much more walkable, that premium is the amount that people consider worth it to pay a little bit more for a house or for rent in more walkable places. So this data point compares to other cities. You see Denver has a 45% premium on housing prices in those walkable areas. We're there at 32%. We don't really understand what Las Vegas is doing, but they have a less than, people are paying less for households in walkable neighborhoods in Vegas for some.
It's really hot down there, really hot.
Indeed. So that kind of gives us a sense for the opportunity for growth in the value of homes in this area. When you look at city investments, how that can impact these households where the average home price is below average. Anything that the city does to improve the walkability of that neighborhood is going to improve the bottom line of each one of those households. And additionally, the more households that we introduce into the neighborhood, those are going to be higher value households as well. As we've been going through our housing analysis, we've identified a few housing constraints. And these, again, this is sort of our first pass at looking at those constraints. These we'll talk about in greater detail, but we wanted to get these in front of you as well to look at how do we deal with these to kind of change or update city policies that can incentivize and introduce more housing in these high value areas where there's good transit access, good access to jobs, and all the things that people need on a daily basis. The low vacancy rate there down at the bottom, I think that across the county, the vacancy rate of housing, no matter whether it's for sale or for rent housing, that's a pretty significant constraint. I think any of these developers that are coming to Murray City, I think that they'll tell you that they can't build housing quickly enough. And so understanding how do we get the right policies in place to get the types of housing that we want in the places that we want. And I think the two The two proposals in front of you tonight, I think both of those really, you're looking at very, context sensitive, building housing in places where we need to be building housing and in the right, in the right form that's needed. The last bit on housing, this was a graphic that we presented at the open house to talk about life cycle housing. And again, at every stage of life, we have different needs as far as housing goes. I'm sure you're familiar with the term age in place. A lot of cities look at how do we help people age in place to be able to stay in their homes. I think a more sustainable approach to that might be looking at how do we help people age in their neighborhood where they can stay in their same neighborhood. They might get to a point where a large home on a large lot is not something they want to maintain anymore, but is something, is a different housing type available in their neighborhood that they can keep their social networks and be able to continue living in much of the way that they have, but have something that's more aligned with their needs. And so I think going forward, continuing to talk about, does every neighborhood in the city have a variety of choices that people are able to make that choice and still stay in their neighborhood. And then finally on housing, one concept that we have been looking at is really talking about context. That when it comes to development, as your conversations tonight about the other two proposals, really context is everything when it comes to development. You want to make sure that that development is appropriate for the neighborhood and it reflects all of the complicated issues that come into every development that comes along. And so with this small area plan, what we're looking at is how do we introduce more housing in this area that could be quite transit oriented. It's not today, but making sure that the context is appropriate. And so the single family neighborhoods, both north and south of 215 there on the upper left, looking at the opportunity to encourage more ADU development, really keeping the character of the neighborhood as it is, but introducing the opportunities for more affordable housing with, a lot of those mother-in-law cottages and those types of development. How do we incentivize that? The other one that I will point out, this sort of sub-area 2 on the right that we've indicated is really the Fashion Place Mall site. And I think that a lot of the development that happens in this area, I'd say the highest opportunity that we've got is really looking at how does that mall site change as it transitions to something that's more urban. So that bottom image on the right where you've got something like a stacked flat type of housing development that has, ground floor retail or services and things like that. That's something that would be very appropriate along State Street or on the Fashion Place Mall site. It would certainly not be appropriate in our sub-area 1 where you don't want to drop in a 4-story building in the middle of a single family neighborhood. And so just starting that housing context discussion about how do we make sure that we're providing appropriate solutions for each one of these sub areas. The sub area 3 there, the area immediately adjacent to the track station. There are a lot of properties there that we'd say were underutilized. UTA owns a significant amount of land there, and they've slowly been building on their surface parking lots and doing things that provide a bit more walkability and access to those transit connections. And then sub-area 4, which today is mostly light industrial. How do we lay the groundwork for transition as more pressure comes along for development? How do we develop in a pattern there that is appropriate for its location at kind of a crossroads of a lot of transportation networks? And then finally, just again, the next time we come to you, we'll have these two sections on housing and connectivity fleshed out to a point where you'll have a draft to review. But this is really, again, a kind of holistic approach to connectivity, looking at traffic impacts mitigation from development in this particular area. What are best practices in improving connectivity that we're seeing across the country? I think a lot of cities are talking a lot more about micro mobility, and what sort of demands on public infrastructure does that introduce? And connections and the street grid. There's certain this area in particular has some challenges with connections and street grid with the two freeways cutting through, as well as a rail corridor and State Street. What sort of improvements can the city make or partner with UDOT and other entities to really improve the connectivity for this neighborhood in particular? Parking management, again, parking's always a concern and a topic that needs to be looked at in depth. We'll have some recommendations on that as well. And then strategic recommendations, looking at phasing, what sort of things can happen in the short term, midterm, long term. Some of the connectivity needs here are quite long-term projects that are inexpensive. So how do we sort of set the wheels in motion for those bigger ticket connectivity investments to sort of be on the city's radar and make a plan forward after this planning process is over? So finally, the next steps will, again, looking at plan drafting to develop a draft of those two sections on housing and connectivity. The public outreach, we had planned to do another public open house in May, which is probably not going to happen at this point. And so we've been looking at what sort of ways can we do digital outreach to get some feedback from the neighborhood and other residents to look at some of these policies that we're evaluating and kind of get their input on those things. We don't have a specific date when we're going to put that out into the public, but we're working on some different platforms that we can use to be most effective at reaching the public when we can't do the types of public meetings that we're used to. And that is my last slide. What questions can we answer, and what gaps can we fill in for you tonight?
Zach, any input? I thought it was excellent, and I'm excited to see a study done for this area. I think it represents there's a lot of potential in this area. It's kind of been forgotten over the years, and it's ripe for some type of organized development, long term, obviously. But I really think there's a lot of potential here, and I'm excited to see the study as it moves forward.
Yeah, and
we agree.
Definitely. And yeah, I've been really impressed with Annalise and Mark and the whole steering committee working together on trying to make something work, especially with, while all this is going on as well. So really, this is kind of your guys' opportunity to kind of, if you have questions about anything going on there, if you want something addressed that hasn't been addressed up to this point, now's kind of a good opportunity to kind of bring that up, and so that we can kind of start to look at it. That was one of the reasons. My
primary concern, at least in the short term, in that is the accessibility with the track station there and the vibrant commercial district that we've got to the east. I really want to see an enhanced and pleasing accessibility plan. I want people to enjoy leaving the track station and going to the central business district of Murray like that. I think that will be a jump start for the area as well. You get more people in there and they get a favorable opinion of the area, even though it's just their path to Fashion Place or to the restaurants there or something. It's going to change everybody's perspective.
So, Bill, this is my first time to go through this process. It all sounds really good. Where does this process begin? Like you're saying, does that begin with new sidewalks and bike paths and bus stops? How does it begin?
As far as implementation, Yeah, I mean, once we get to the point where we have draft policies and recommendations and needs identified, what we'll look at is how do we take a phased approach. Some sidewalk projects are really easy to complete and are relatively inexpensive. Some are kind of surprisingly complex and challenging. And so that's sort of the last step in this process, is to prioritize and to make sure that we're taking a kind of real world approach to each one of these things. One of the pieces that I'd say is most pertinent to your commission is looking at policies. There are several policies within any city that have a major impact on what's allowed and what's encouraged, and identifying where those adjustments need to be made. And, other than time investment, those aren't big ticket items that it takes a lot for the city. So typically what we see with a small area plan is the first thing that happens after that is the city might go through and update specific policies and zoning ordinances and things as a first step, so that when a developer shows up with a project that really aligns with the goals and objectives, it doesn't take an additional 3 months or something to get those policy issues resolved.
So I saw that zoning was one of the items listed on one of the slides. Well, not specifically zoning, but zoning in the area could be a hindrance. But help me understand that too, Commission. Typically, landowners come to us and request a zone change. Do we typically rezone an area before someone's requested?
I don't think it was necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but it was more along the lines of changing the zoning that actually, no, you're right. I apologize. So typically we don't necessarily change the zoning in the area, but we don't do broad brush zoning typically. It has been done in the past. The mixed use zone, for example, that was done. That was a city-led zone change back in 2010. I think the MCCD was a big, broad sweeping zone change. There were a few. TOD, Jared is also telling me we've done it that as well. So Murray has a track record of doing it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it would be at this point. What would be more likely to happen is that it would be kind of, as this plan goes forward, it would be kind of adopted as part, like an addendum to the general plan. That's how we've done the other, that's how we did Murray Central Station. So it could potentially update what this zoning gets changed to according to the future land use map. So we could support different types of zones, or, as we go forward, an implementation item could be to create an entirely new zone for this area. That's kind of one of the things that we're looking at and trying to decide, and working with the consultant is, what's appropriate there. Is there a zone that currently works, or do we need to come up with something new? Or that's part of the process there.
Yeah, and I think one example is the ADU ordinance. So if we're going to, these single family neighborhoods and telling them, we encourage ADU development in this area, not many of the lots in this area are large enough to meet your current ADU requirements. And so we don't want to go to them and say, ADUs are a great way to introduce housing in your neighborhood without a lot of change. And they come to the city and say, I'm all in. How do I go through this process? And for you to say, well, you have to have a lot that's at least 12,000 square feet, and none of the lots in these neighborhoods meet that threshold. So we don't want to be putting out there things that, the city is the first, kind of killjoy on those types of things.
Hey,
Not
Mark,
that we need to get into an ADU discussion tonight.
Mark, for you and Annalise, have you gotten good input, do you think, from UTA? Good, adequate, enough that understand and can incorporate what UTA would like to do or thinking about doing on their properties and other properties adjoining the station there?
Sure. We've met with you. Had a meeting with UTA and had a couple additional conversations about this particular station. They are very on board and very excited that this project is moving forward. We've had a representative from UTA at all of our steering committee meetings as well. They have, when you meet with UTA, there's the people who all they want to talk about is the bus has a hard time turning left right here. We need to fix that. Like that's great. It's good that we've got that level of detail. But then there's also the group that looks at long-term, what sort of development is happening. They own a lot of property at every station. How do we make sure that their riders who are coming to the station in a vehicle still have a place to park, but also we have all of this space in the sky above these parking lots that could be doing a lot more for walkability and ridership. This particular station, if you look at it, you could get to any major job center in the valley from this station, no matter where you work or where you're headed. Really, there should be a lot more going on at this station. So we all agree there's a lot of opportunity here. How do we make sure that the plan puts in motion the types of things that we want to see? UTA, I'd say they're becoming a lot more interested in more development on their property. They don't have anything in the works. So we met with their TOD group and they said, we have nothing planned. So anything that the city kind of comes with and says, here's what we think is appropriate, I think they would be supportive of.
Good.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? All right. Well, thank you very much. That was
thank you.
That was very interesting, and I appreciate the update. I thought the open house was really well attended as well, and I enjoyed the time I spent there.
Great. Thank you. We'll make sure that the existing conditions report gets out to you, and you guys can have a lot of good reading to do while you're stuck at home.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Planning reading.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, staff, is there any additional information we need to discuss or be made aware of?
I don't think so. We had a deadline today. There's a couple things, not a lot, for your next meeting. All subdivisions, actually. So that should be super fun. And other than that, not really. Just everybody stay safe, stay home, stay healthy.
Absolutely.
So
thanks, everybody. I thought this.
I'm planning on meeting in person. No, I mean, the next meeting, 1st of May, I'm planning on being there, sitting right in my spot. So
yeah, probably not. It actually looks
I'm
like
with
Melinda.
Scott. I'm with Scott. We can meet Scott. We'll do the Zoom from the
exactly.
Yeah.
No offense, Scott, but I don't want to be within 50 yards of you.
Yep.
You guys
I know where you live.
You guys all think about getting back together, and all I can think about is what is Phil drinking in that nice glass, and
It was cranberry juice.
Oh, darn.
Cranberry apple.
That's good.
Cranberry apple.
With vodka.
And he's sticking to it.
On you know what? Friday.
So I just wanted to take a minute and just express my thanks and appreciation for my staff for all of their effort to try and get electronic meetings figured out and the work they have done to have these meetings happen and still be able to take public comment. That was one of the things that initially I was so concerned about, is I didn't want to lose the integrity of the meetings and the public comment process. So I think we've made the best of a very difficult situation, and my staff have done a great job getting us where we needed to be. And you guys as commissioners are just fantastic. Thank you for adapting. It's very, very much appreciated.
I thought it went really well, so thank you. And yes, thanks to staff. This has been real smooth.
And the mayor and the mayor's office commented last time at the end of the meeting that, they were very impressed by how well things went. And so wanted you to know that the compliments were there, and I just appreciate everyone's efforts on this.
Awesome. Thank you, Melinda.
And just because I can, I'll show you that this is how we've been all day. So.
Is Jared awake?
I'm up. Hey, Susan, did you get any compensation for being in the commercial?
No. Well,
At least a free T-shirt.
She wins so
I
often
win so often
that they were like, you kind of need to, you need to pay back a little bit. So.
Wow.
So yes, I have in a way.
Okay, I'll make a
I just
motion.
don't see is that.
Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second. We're adjourned.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.